Welcome to the Vitality Equation, exploring research in health and well-being one paper at a time.
Hey everyone, glad you could join us. Today, we're diving into something super fascinating and complex, but also incredibly important, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. We're tackling the impact of personalized sleep and nutrition on autism spectrum disorder, or ASD, from a systems biology angle. It's not exactly light reading, but it's crucial stuff.
Right, and I'm particularly interested in how lifestyle changes, like those we often discuss here, might actually make a real difference for people with ASD. I mean, we always talk about the interconnectedness of everything, so I'm keen to explore that with this specific condition.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm coming at it from, how these interventions might impact cognitive processes, especially since ASD is often characterized by differences in how people process information. So thinking about, how could we reorganize thought patterns and behaviors through these changes?
And for me, it's the nuts and bolts of it. How does better sleep and proper nutrition actually change the physiology and therefore the symptoms? I mean, we're always banging on about the importance of movement and sleep, so how does it all fit into this bigger picture of ASD?
Okay, so before we get into the real nitty-gritty research, I saw this interesting article the other day about a study where they were looking at the gut microbiome in kids with ASD. Apparently, there's a significant difference in their gut bacteria compared to neurotypical kids. And it's kind of wild to me, right? Because how much we now know about the gut-brain connection. That alone makes me think diet is just so integral to all of this. Like, maybe if we can shift the gut microbiome, we can actually see improvements in behavior and cognition.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great jumping off point. It's not just about the gut for the gut's sake, right? It's about what those microbial populations are doing. What metabolites are they producing? How does that signal up to the brain, affecting neurotransmitter production, inflammation, the whole cascade? And that all ties in with the systems biology idea we were talking about. It's not one thing, it's a whole web.
Totally, and it makes sense too when you think about how diet and sleep can directly affect inflammation levels in the body. And inflammation is often implicated in a lot of neurodevelopmental conditions, including ASD. Like the connection between gut inflammation and brain inflammation, that's not just some abstract theory, right? I mean, we see it playing out in real time with people's mood and cognitive function.
Exactly. And when we talk about personalized interventions, we're not just talking about following a generic diet or sleep plan, right? We're talking about identifying specific deficiencies, gut imbalances, sleep patterns, and then tailoring a plan that addresses those individual needs. This is where the systems part of the equation becomes so important.
Right. And from a cognitive perspective, if you're constantly dealing with inflammation and gut issues, you can bet that's impacting your focus, your ability to learn and process information. So, if you can address the physiological stuff, you're also clearing the path for cognitive improvements through targeted therapy, whether that's CBT or some other intervention. Like, you're getting the body out of the way, so to speak, so that the mind can heal.
That's such a great point about the cortisol. I mean, think about it from the stress perspective, too. If someone's gut is unhappy, that's a source of chronic stress, and that impacts sleep further. It's a vicious cycle. So, from my perspective, it's not just about diet or sleep, but also about incorporating techniques like mindfulness and meditation that can help regulate the stress response. A lot of research is showing how much these practices affect our nervous system, and, therefore, all the cascade effects on our body, including our gut.
Yes, and the beauty is that it all works together, right? If you're regulating stress through meditation, that can also improve sleep quality, which then reduces inflammation, which then improves gut health. The interventions work synergistically. It's not like do this or that, it's do this and that. And from a cognitive perspective, that also plays in by reducing overall anxiety and improving focus and the ability to learn better coping mechanisms. If they're less dysregulated physically, then there's more bandwidth for them to actually engage in therapeutic techniques.
And we cannot underestimate the role of exercise, can we? When we're physically active, that's a natural stress reliever. It helps regulate our sleep cycle and improves gut motility. All of those factors contribute to reduced inflammation and better overall health. So, if we can incorporate movement in ways that are actually engaging for individuals with ASD, not just making them do some boring exercise, but something fun and tailored to their sensory needs, then that's another piece of this very complex puzzle.
Absolutely. And when you're moving, you're also activating your lymphatic system, which is crucial for removing toxins and waste from your body, further reducing inflammation. This is something that is not often thought about, but so fundamental for healing and the removal of these waste products. It's all linked. It's all part of the system we're talking about. Plus, when you're engaging in physical activity, it promotes the release of endorphins, those feel-good chemicals that can really improve mood and overall well-being. It's a natural way to boost mood and combat that stress we were talking about, which is fantastic. It's not just about the physical benefit, it's a holistic approach.
And that boost in mood, of course, has cognitive benefits too, right? When someone's feeling better, they're more likely to be receptive to learning and cognitive therapy. I mean, think of the impact that a consistent exercise routine, combined with better sleep and a balanced diet, could have on someone's ability to focus, regulate emotions, and socialize. It's not just about physical well-being, it's about their entire life experience. It's almost like you're rebuilding their neurocognitive framework from the ground up, starting with those foundational lifestyle factors.
And that's the thing, isn't it? It's not just about treating symptoms of ASD, it's about supporting overall health in a way that actually allows people to thrive. It's not like a quick fix, but it's about identifying the underlying imbalances and building a foundation for long-term well-being. And the personalized aspect is key. What works for one person might not work for another, so it's about finding the combination that's right for them. This requires a tailored approach with ongoing observation and adjustments. There is no one size fits all. We need to be thinking on a case-by-case basis.
Exactly. And from my perspective, it's also about developing better tools to assess cognitive function and emotional regulation in individuals with ASD, not just the standard assessments, but more granular assessments that capture the nuances of their experience and changes following dietary or sleep interventions. We need to be able to actually measure what we're impacting. And that includes being able to accurately measure things like executive function and cognitive flexibility, which are often impacted in ASD, and see how they respond to changes in diet and sleep patterns.
And from a research perspective, we also need to look at the long-term effects of these interventions. Not just a 3-month trial, but what happens to people after a year, 2 years, 5 years down the line. How do these interventions affect the trajectory of their development and their long-term health outcomes? And also, what other biomarkers might we be able to track to assess progress beyond just symptom reduction? Things like inflammatory markers or sleep quality metrics that gives us an objective measurement tool.
That's it. And for me, going forward, one of the things I think is so important is to understand the role of the mind-body connection more deeply. How does our emotional state actually impact our gut health and our nervous system, and vice versa? This bidirectional communication is where true healing and understanding lies, I think. And if we can understand that interplay, then we can develop strategies that are not just reactive but actually preventive. We can teach people the tools early in life to help them regulate their system, not just waiting for something to go wrong. I think there's huge potential there for early intervention based on those principles.
And yes, and from a cognitive perspective, I think a lot more research needs to go into developing really customized cognitive training programs that take into account the individual's specific neurocognitive strengths and weaknesses. You know, ASD is so diverse, and we need to move beyond broad stroke approaches and really start tailoring interventions to each person's unique cognitive profile. It's not about just teaching the same coping strategies to everyone, but, really understanding how they process information, how they learn, and then developing strategies that fit with that, And that includes interventions that help with processing speed, sensory overload, social interaction. It's a really broad and complex area that we need to further explore.
Exactly, and building on that, from my perspective, we need to develop much better wearable technologies to track sleep patterns, activity levels, and even other biomarkers like heart rate variability in real time. This data could then be used to inform personalized sleep and exercise plans that are constantly adjusted based on someone's actual physiological response. We need to move away from one-size-fits-all approaches and embrace a more dynamic and data-driven model of care. It's all about feedback loops and using real-time data to optimize what we do.
It's like, imagine having an AI-driven system that tracks everything, that has all this data, from the microbiome to the sleep cycle to the emotional state, and then generates these real-time, personalized recommendations. It's not science fiction anymore. This is what we can do now with the technology that we have. We just have to start putting these pieces together. And that's where systems biology comes in, right? It's not about looking at one piece of the puzzle in isolation. It's about looking at the whole picture.
Yeah, and that's the exciting bit for me too. It's like the convergence of neuroscience, nutrition, sleep science, and technology, all coming together to create a truly personalized approach to health and well-being. And I think this could be a game changer for people with ASD. It's about moving away from symptom management towards actually fostering better health across all the levels: biological, cognitive, emotional. It's not just about treating a condition, but optimizing a person's full potential.
And this moves away from looking at ASD as a disease or a deficit model to really seeing that neurodiversity is a spectrum, and that with the right support, people with ASD can thrive. And I think these sorts of tailored interventions focused on sleep, nutrition, and exercise aren't just for people with ASD. The underlying mechanisms are universal. So we are in fact improving our understanding of health, well-being, and optimization of human performance in everyone. And I think that's where this research is so important. It really emphasizes the interconnectedness of our system. And we have a long way to go, but we are making amazing progress.
I couldn't agree more. It's all connected, you know? And when you start to see how these pieces fit together, it's like, wow, we're only just scratching the surface. But even with what we know now, there's so much that we can do to improve lives. And that's what drives me, you know? It's not just about the scientific breakthroughs, but about putting these findings into practical application. That is the real key to unlocking better health and well-being for all.
Absolutely. And it's not just about applying research in the clinic or in academic settings. We need to think about real-world applications and how we can empower individuals with ASD and their families to actually implement these changes in their daily lives. We need to provide them with the knowledge and resources that they need to take control of their own health and well-being. Because, ultimately, that's where the biggest changes will come from. We need to move from passive recipients of care to active participants in their health journey.
And I think we should wrap up there. I mean, it's clear that this research has huge potential, but it requires a really collaborative approach, and it's exciting to see the direction we are headed with personalized health interventions. So, as always, it's about translating what we are learning into real-world improvements that will make a difference to people's lives. This research is very promising, and we are learning every day.
Yep, absolutely. This was a deep dive into a lot of different and complicated topics, but I think we covered all the most important aspects. So, thank you for joining us today, and we hope that this has shed some light on this important and exciting area of research.
Thanks, everyone, and see you next time.
Take care, everyone.